It's taken a little bit of time, but I think I've come up with some kind of idea for a loadout that probably is for the tryhard out there. Somebody who really just wants to win. That doesn't really want to make too many compromises, but at the same time, it's very easy and accessible and doesn't require a whole lot of gear and a whole lot of blaster. So, let's see what you think about this one, because I think rather highly of it. So like I just said, this build from the ground up is meant to be accessible to a degree. If you don't have the blasters and stuff, it's going to be really expensive. And it's meant to be about as balanced as it could possibly be. You can be both defensive and aggressive. It'll work in just about any game type, any scenario, for just about any type of player. Now, this may not be what your preferred setup is, and if you do something better with something else, that's completely fine. I'm just trying to give people who are a little indecisive or may have these tools and never use them a way they could possibly use them in a route that they probably expected, but at the same time they might not be using yet. And I really want to talk about it because I'm pretty proud of this one. Starting with gear, the only thing you'll probably need, at least to start with, is going to be a chest rig, and this one is very inexpensive. It's the NC Star chest rig you can kind of find on Amazon. Holds normal 18-round Nerf magazines completely fine, but of course we're not necessarily going to be using those. It's just that it has an option there if you want to expand and use it into other stuff, and fits just about anybody. I'm huge. I'm an absolute unit, a mega chunker, and all I had to do was cut the strap in the back, elongate it, put it on a little bit of a stretchy material there to make sure it doesn't kill me when I bend over, and it works perfectly fine. Again, really cheap and extremely effective. I like it a lot. I've been using it for years. And about the only other piece of gear you're probably going to want is going to be a sling. A standard Nerf one will do you perfectly fine. If you don't have one of these or can't find them, you can always go to Walmart, go to the sporting goods hunting section. You'll most likely find some kind of really cheap $5 to $10 sling that you can use perfectly fine. Or you can go to like an airsoft store, get yourself a fancy one. It doesn't really matter. For a primary, we're going to be using the Caliburn. Whatever one you want to use is kind of up to you. I would prefer a Caliburn that uses a short dart magazine, because short darts are inherently a little bit better because they're just more aerodynamic, they're more weight efficient, they tend to fly straighter, farther, pretty much every single time, and worker darts are really easy to get nowadays. So a Caliburn, whatever short dart mags you prefer, katanas, talons, 3D printed ones, whatever you want, and of course magazines to go with that, and darts to go with that. Worker darts are kind of the standard. They're not necessarily the best, but they're extremely good. They're plentiful. They can be a little expensive if you buy them from a US seller. If you buy them overseas, they can be a lot cheaper. And usually they're pretty durable darts, so you can pick them back up and reuse them because they don't have long foam bodies. They're really short, and they're extremely effective. You're going to have very good range. You're going to have very good accuracy. And the Caliburn itself can be tweaked to just about any possible FPS cap you could possibly want. This one right here hits about 200. If you want to tone it down, you can put a different spring, get about 150, 140 out of it. You want to go higher, these things can hit up to like 400 FPS with the absolute maximum perfect setup. That should cover the gambit of just about everything that isn't HVZ. This is obviously a very PvP-orientated build. I mean, Caliburns aren't probably going to be good for HVZ, although I have seen Caliburns that can hit lower than 130 if you remove O-rings and use really ridiculously light springs. But it's also an extremely effective blaster. It's not the fastest shooting thing ever, but it fires fast enough. It doesn't hold the most ammo, but it holds enough. And you know what? You're not going to be spending through ammo all that often. You're probably going to have more range as long as you're edging up to that FPS cap, and you're most likely going to have more accuracy than just about anything out there that's not also a Caliburn. If you want more accuracy out of it, you can of course put a scar barrel or something on the end of it. That's more money, that's more time, that's up to you. The base blaster, whether you buy the worker one or one from Captain Slug himself, should do you perfectly fine and allow you to do pretty much any role you need to do. Do you need to defend a point? Do you need to defend an objective? Well, this will do that rather effectively. You can sit in the back, you're not exactly under pressure from anything, and you can pick off targets at your leisure. Do you need to run up and attack? Do you need to move around and bop around between cover and shoot people? Again, very, very effective. The Caliburn will do pretty much anything you want it to do. It's not going to be the best at locking down objectives or anything. It's not going to be the best at locking down objectives or anything like that because, of course, it's pump action. There's only so much fire rate you can get out of something like this, but it's going to be pretty much adequate at just about anything you throw at it, which makes it an extremely versatile blaster. And this is just a base model. You can add all sorts of stuff to it. You can cut it down and make it into a Talon Claw. You could make it into a rival blaster, a mega blaster. It all kind of depends on what you want to do with your Caliburn, which makes it an ideal blaster for a loadout like this, where not only could you use just the basic Caliburn and be effective with it, but you can choose and specialize at your will. And of course, because of its slower rate of fire and usual extreme effectiveness and when it comes to accuracy and range and whatnot, this is probably about all you're going to need for magazines. Let's say 2 to 3, maybe. 1 in the blaster, 2 in reserve. That's 45 darts. And of course, if you need to top up on the field, you can fill one of these pouches up with half darts and just load it up as you go. I just want to keep in mind that, like, 3 magazines right here with worker half darts at, like, normal retail price. This is like $5 in darts right here. So you might really want to pick yours up in between matches. A sling on your blaster, a couple of magazines, you're pretty much good to go for your primary, but what should you use for a secondary or a sidearm? Well, in my opinion, nothing's really going to be beating the fact that you have a worker hurricane on you. So not only do you have an amazingly effective Springer blaster, but you're also going to have a really effective flywheel blaster at that. The worker hurricane can be tweaked to do a whole bunch of different stuff. If you want to use one stock with AA batteries, you'll get like 20 FPS. You want to throw like 2 IMRs in there, like 3.7 volts, 14650 batteries or whatever they're called, you can get about 100 FPS. You wire it up for a LiPo just on the stock motors and wheels, you'll get about 120. You want to upgrade those wheels, and this is all with a 3S LiPo, you can get about 140. Then if you go dual stage cage with upgraded wheels and everything, you could punch anywhere from 170 to 200. Now, if for some reason you need more power than that, and you just have a lot of money to throw at a very simple problem, well, of course, you can throw a double brushless setup in here and get like 250 plus. That's not a joke. That is the thing somebody has done. So it gets really exciting with this thing, and because it's a 6-shot flywheel pistol, you can rattle off shots really quick with it. Now, the one downside about this is it will pretty much at the moment only use normal full-length darts. But if you're using the right darts, in my opinion, the Adventure Force waffles, you can get really good accuracy, and really, this isn't something that you should want accuracy with. This should pretty much be used to pick targets off, or if you're caught reloading or a jam or something, you can whip this out, rattle off all 6 shots. If you want to upgrade it a little bit further, you can of course put a rear loading slot on the back of your magazines, which means you can rear load it relatively easily, which means that it turns itself kind of into a revolver. Well, it already was a revolver, but now you have a high-powered, low-capacity, extremely effective sidearm. If you want to tag somebody out at extreme range, you just rattle off your entire magazine and you're good to go. Of course, if you really need to, you can prime your Caliburn, have it in one hand, and have this in the other, and you get the 1 power shot with a couple of quick follow-ups. So, really, there's not a whole lot this blaster isn't good for, and if you don't want to use something like this, because it's if you do the work yourself, it's relatively cheap. The base blaster is usually about $24. Then, of course, you can swap it out for something else like a pigeon or a turkey. If you have no idea what those are, they're these things. Or a wide variety of other blasters, but in my opinion, when it comes to doing just about everything, the Worker Hurricane can't really be beat. It does pretty good rapid fire, has extreme range, pretty much better than any other semi-auto pistol I can think of. And this also diversifies your ammo a little bit. Now, you're not supposed to be using this thing as your main blaster, but this allows you to use full-length darts relatively easily, and since you're using 2 different types of darts, if something goes wrong, you can't find any more half darts, you don't have any more half darts on you, and you weren't carrying any full-length magazines for your primary, because honestly, you're probably not going to hit anything, then you can scavenge and use this blaster. So I really do recommend getting one of the rear loading chambers for your Worker Hurricane if you decide to use it. So I really recommend you get that rear loading mag plate for your Worker Hurricane if this is what you're going for. And if you really need to, extra mags for it aren't really that expensive. You can carry 2 or 3 of them on you. 2 little boxes, fits in the pouch on your chest rig, no problem whatsoever. And you've got basically everything you could possibly need. Extremely powerful, fast-firing blaster that you could do pretty much anything with, but doesn't carry a lot of ammo unless you want to throw a mag adapter on here, which is a thing you can do. An amazingly effective pump action, short dart spamming beast. I mean, really, I can't think of anything that would encapsulate I want to win more than a setup like this, unless you wanted to throw like a really, really beefed out Strife as a secondary, which is a lot bigger than something like this, so keep that in mind. It might require some kind of special holster to have on you. But for the minimal amount of effort and gear that this requires, this is an extremely efficient setup, and besides wiring up a dual-staged Hurricane, really, it's not that hard. I mean, you can buy this blaster completely assembled, and you can buy one of these and just toss IMRs in it, and it's going to be good to go for pretty much most of your short-range engagements. If you want to really max these things out, you require a bit of knowledge on springers and, let's be honest, some money, and you require a bit of knowledge on soldering and flywheelers and, let's be honest, a bit of money. And it's really easy to keep this thing, whether you want in one of these pouches on the side, just put it in here, or as I like to do it, just stuff it in there like that. Really easy to keep on you. With your sling, you can easily switch to it effortlessly. Works extremely well, which means that you really shouldn't have a point where you're ever caught off guard, unable to return fire. As for how to use this setup, it really depends on how you want to play. Again, the most effective way is probably sitting in the very back behind the rest of your teammate, let the flywheelers and everything with rapid fire go before you, and cover objectives or mark off targets at range as you prefer. You're probably going to have more accuracy, you're probably going to have more range. You really don't have to worry so much about getting up close and personal, although the blaster is totally capable of doing it. Now, turning the corner and getting hosed down by a rapid strike or something that's full auto is gonna really suck. But it's still something that you probably don't need to worry about, because this thing, even at a short distance, darts are gonna be firing so fast, it's gonna be really hard for people to dodge them. And that's kind of the name of the game, because you're probably gonna be carrying two almost 200 FPS blasters. It's gonna be really hard to dodge your shots. Extremely hard, in fact, and you're gonna be relatively accurate. I mean, even this thing with Adventure Force waffles is relatively accurate, and you could just spam all 6 shots off like nothing's a problem anyway, and then shooting short darts out of this thing, yeah, it's gonna be fun, and it's gonna be little tiny whizzing darts that just scare the crap out of me. It's awesome. If you've ever been on the receiving end of a Caliburn with short darts, you know the feeling. If you haven't, you haven't lived yet. Again, this isn't really a good loadout for HVZ. You don't really need low capacity sidearms like this unless you're doing like the first day, and even then, you're kind of squandering the potential of this. Although you can get it to, you know, under 100 FPS by just throwing in 2 IMRs or something in there. 6 shots, something like this. It works for like a day 1 blaster, but honestly, you're better using some kind of pullback springer to make sure the, you know, patient zero doesn't get anywhere near you. And the amount of gear is relatively light and relatively obtainable for pretty much everyone. So while the blasters, to get to their maximum, can be pretty difficult if you're on a budget, the gear really isn't. And you can substitute something like this with a overcompensated retaliator or even a pump action long shot. And of course, your sidearm can be pretty much anything because it is a sidearm, but again, if you want to use something like something that's mag-fed that shares the ammo type with your primary, like a pigeon or a turkey, those are options as well, but they do relatively different things that specialize a little bit more than something that's pretty much bare bones and usable in every situation you could possibly imagine. And so that's the build. Let me know what you think down in that comment section below. I'd really appreciate to get feedback on this because I haven't done a whole lot of loadout videos like this, and it's one of my favorite things to kind of get my hands on. And hey, for once we did a loadout that wasn't really specialized or anything like that. It's pretty much meant to be ubiquitous and competitive. Other than that, I'm Walcom S7. Thank you very much for watching this video, and of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different one.
You gotta up, upside down.